Right. Get my screen shared. Thank you kindly, everybody, for making it. Give some time for folks to file in. Um, so yeah, uh, we're here at, working group call 52 for a governance working group, a stacks governance for the community, the stacks ecosystem, October 28th. Yeah, it's kind of amazing we're this far along, but welcome everybody. As always, we can start with some stand-ups, see if just an idea of what everybody is working on, that's governance related or maybe indirectly governance related, since we're always all over the place. And yeah, go through blockers and what will happen over the next few weeks and get into the rest of the call. Yeah, I guess I can start stand up. And then go down the list here. Yeah, so I've been really heads down and gearing up for the governance lab, as I've said in previous meetings, but also getting more comfortable with some of the, with that interview happening today, and winding down a little bit. And there's some stuff I've been working on for the advocates program, where, I've been pushing out a few, forum posts and things like this to keep folks that are really interested up to date in all of our deep thinking. But I've been getting together these Figma Jam, which is like their Miro board version of Figma. It does some pretty powerful things, and I think it would be pretty useful for some async collaboration with all the different time zones that we have in the advocates and all the fairly disparate projects, and finding a way to bring folks together there, and not just have a system design presentation in the document, but have a functional systems design where folks can see everything going on in an asynchronous or collaborative way, in real time if they wanted to as well. But there's no real blockers to that. There's some plugins that make all of that stuff run smoothly in terms of synthesizing some of the actions you can do on those docs. I'm excited about that. So those blockers were there last few weeks, but are now not there. So it's just a matter of me getting, there's a feature that allows a video of yourself to pop up and walk folks through the document and the presentation or what have you. And I'll probably be using that to get some nice asynchronous stuff going. But I'm excited for that. I feel like there's a lot we can do with the functionality of it. In the advocates. So yeah, that's what will be happening for myself the next couple of weeks, is setting up some events, workshops for the advocates that get folks collaborating and working, and some of the interesting things got going on in that doc. But yeah, that'll be all for me. And yeah, we can get into anybody else's stand-ups or anything they'd like to share. Anybody, Jason, Jude, Juliet, I'll let you guys.
I'll jump in real quick. Just nothing new to report on my side, but just happy to be back and listening in.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Beautiful. No, it's beautiful to have you back, man. I'm glad you're doing good. Juliet, do you have anything for us? I know you've been heads down with me in a lot of ways and some long calls.
Yeah, definitely been working on that for the governance lab stuff, but also been working and looking at next steps for the code of conduct. I think I posted a couple of things about thinking that the next step is to use the SIP process for that, and I'm happy to hear some feedback from anyone here. Been doing a lot of reading of a lot of Jude's stuff to understand the different SIPs and understand the SIP process, and that's where I am. Also looking at the next upcoming SIPs to create something for the CAB, the governance CAB. So been doing a little work on those two projects. No blockers, except time.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
The universal blocker, I know.
Yeah, one size fits all. But yeah, thank you for reminding myself about the CAB work. I know there's a few of us here that are really excited about that, and have some reading to do myself on that. So thank you kindly for the refresher. And yeah, Jude, anything you want to update us on?
Sure. Speaking of the governance CAB, we're going to need the governance CAB sign off on SIP 12 in order for it to move forward. That's the upgrade that's going to increase the block size and decongest the network for a time.
Beautiful. Thank you, Colleen, for that update. Yeah, it feels like we can do some due diligence in exposing that to folks through the Advocates program and other avenues, as well as doing our due diligence on reviewing it. So thank you, Colleen, Jude, for that update. Yeah, and we can get into some of if there's anybody here that has any foundation updates for us, I'm not sure. We can get into it. I know this board seat has been a thing. Juliet, do you want to give us any updates on any of this work in general?
No, I don't think I have any updates for other than what I mentioned in my stand-up with the code of conduct and moving that to the next stage in the process. Would love to hear from some feedback on whether the SIP is appropriate. I talked with community members, but didn't really get any feedback. I did look at all the information on the SIP page about what is appropriate for that, and it looked to me that a code of conduct is appropriate to put into a SIP. So if anyone has any feedback on that, I'd be glad to hear about it.
Okay. No, yeah, it sounds like a good opportunity to get some of that exposure that I was talking about, circulating,
Yeah, send over a draft as soon as you're ready. We're happy to get the process started ratifying it.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, is there any other updates when it comes to the foundation from anybody here that we may not be aware of? Let us know. But other than that, we can move right along. Doing good on time. There's some action items here. I think this is some work Jenny is doing. I'm not aware of any insights into this. Maybe there's somebody here. I think, Julia, I heard you speaking on this a little bit recently. Jude, maybe you have some insights here.
Just to mention, yeah, definitely we should be, I think, talking to people about getting more people involved in the consideration advisory boards. I think that on the ethics, it's me and Jude are the only ones there.
Okay.
And I think we need a third person at minimum, but we should get more people involved in the governance as well. So would love to hear thoughts on how we can recruit. I know I've talked to a few people in the community who had been part of the governance group that aren't as involved anymore, to try and pull them in. I'm not sure if they actually got involved, because that was on the, I think, the diversity cab. I think there's a diversity cab. And so that's what I know right now, and just been talking to people, but we should probably create some kind of concerted effort to get the word out.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Colleen, for the refresher. Yeah, this is interesting, the way we can incorporate it into some of the stuff that we're doing with the advocates for exposure. And there's probably some folks that are fairly invested already in what's going on, would be interested. Yeah. Thank you, Conley.
One thought I had related to that is I think it was just in the user X channel, or I can find it again, but they were trying to make a list of all the Discord servers that have spun up around the different projects, especially with NFTs being so big. And then you have like separate ones like ArcDeco and City Coins. It would be good if we had a way to pass messages through all these channels, like, hey, there's these governance cabs. We are looking for more members. You can help make decisions. You can fit in this category. Your basic requirement is just to respond when there's a new SIP. Like, just some kind of condensed message that we can share across all these channels, because I think we'll get a lot more eyes than only doing it in stacks.
Yeah, totally, 100% agree. I think this is, Harold, I think this is along the lines of some of the stuff we've been talking about, and getting the word out to the whole community, not just the folks in stacks, but like getting the message out about what's going on in the ecosystem to all members of the community when it comes to specifically what we're talking about today, the governance issues.
Yeah.
So any thoughts? Should we start writing some blogs on the discourse? Any thoughts about, the best methods?
Yeah. Well, I do like the blurb ideas from Jason, and getting it into as many different areas, even outside of the main server as possible. Yeah, and maybe there's something we can do. Maybe there's, I think there may be folks and advocates that are interested in helping with this type of work specifically, if not being interested in it themselves, of course, but particularly getting it out beyond the advocates and getting it out beyond Stack sounds very interesting in a blurb, and maybe Discourse is a good place to have a link to that blurb or something like, or even more details from the blurb. But yeah, this is something we should hop on as quickly as possible, because yeah, there should be a fair amount of folks interested in collaborating, and it would be probably best if it's not just the same faces popping up on all of the different caps. So yeah, thank you kindly for the insight, y'all. And yeah.
Yeah, I had one more thought on that too. I mean, given the timing of our meetings, we have one every 2 weeks. I would see it reasonable to post a message like this to all identified channels once after the meeting. And we could even rotate who does it, but just, like help put together the idea of what kind of message we want to push out, whether it was a small update from the meeting or a small ask, like, hey, good cabs are still available, and trying to just summarize what we want to share with them. Because I do think that the Discords are definitely well attended. I do like the idea of a forum post if we have time to put something together, or if there's something we can point back to that makes sense. It's always good to have a link. But yeah, I just get this feeling like once every 2 weeks, we could send a message across not only the Stacks Discord, but all Discords.
Yeah, this sounds like a nice flow.
I'll make a comment on there too, and we don't have to dwell on it too long.
Okay.
Go ahead and make that one. Go ahead and make that one, and I'll add to it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, yeah, thank you guys for those insights, and I'm glad you refreshed us on some things we have coming up for the cabs as well. Yeah, Juliet, you mentioned some code of conduct work you've been doing. Are there any other details you want to give us about this? This is exciting, and of course, reach out for collaboration at any of the decision-making stuff that we can do in the advocates.
Yeah, I'll definitely do. Right now is really looking at the appropriateness of using a SIP, and then looking at the process. I started drafting a little bit, but I'm happy to, share with everyone, and, anybody who wants to jump in and help, that's great. So it's really taking there's a couple of changes that I'm going to make. I'm going to post that on there's changes that I'm making in this process, and that will be posted on the RFC. And then I want to push this towards the SIP. So I think that's the flow process, because I think the community should be exposed to the changes first, as these are changes requested by the community, and then have some time period to look at it, and then push it over to the SIP. Okay.
And am I mistaken? It seems like it seems like an opportunity to get some eyes both on code of conduct and some to work on some paths for SIP exposure too, which I know is a big deal. And yeah, again, this is something that we should be really pushing for in terms of opportunities in the advocates program. And we have been thinking more and more about how to get some task creation flows going that aren't too slippery of a slope in terms of reward and incentives and things like this. So I think this will play into a lot of these things, including some of the bounty stuff that Jason and other folks have been thinking about for a while. So yeah, thank you kindly, Juliet. I have an update finally for just a forum post for folks to dive into some of the deeper ways we're thinking of incentive structures and things like this. So yeah, open for any conversation here if folks have looked at it already, or if we want to talk about it a little bit later, an open discussion or something like this. But it's some exciting stuff that I'm happy to finally get out to folks in terms of some of the unique approaches But yeah, if there's no questions there now, we can, if we have time, if folks want to get into it later in open discussion. Yeah, so I think this is,
Yeah, last two are me. And I don't have any updates there, just that the community did decide on one. I believe it was the one with the square around it after we tallied up the votes,
right.
5-2. So that's our fancy new logo. We can save that somewhere, and I can also use it alongside the website. I just got to jump in there and make some changes.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, all right. Yeah, I remember voting on that in the meeting. Yeah, and this is backlog stuff.
Yeah, so once we update the website with the new brand assets and we get some of the content updated, which is like the notes that haven't been downloaded in a while, then we can point it to an official domain. I have stacksgov.com, or it could be a subdomain of stacks.org if the foundation wanted to do that. So we can look at some options to get this a little more official than just a GitHub Pages standard domain, but nothing critical, just a nice visual.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Thank you for all the effort for all these strains of time.
I appreciate that. I really just need to close the loop on some of them though. So we'll get there. We'll get there.
I think we all feel similar in some kind of way.
Yeah, open projects are not fun for my OCD. But let's head into discuss. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we discussed briefly in the stand-ups about where this is going, how that the interview program has just the interview process has just happened for us when it comes to this this initiative. So the next step is to get a deck out for the community, maybe have it linked here for you guys when it comes to presenting this in a digestible way for the community to tap into, which we've kind of already done with the roundtable, but this is a part of the process for the residency program in general. So those are the next steps. If there's any questions or anything on this, I know we had some good jam sessions on this before about the roadmaps and things like this. So if there's any lingering ideas or things like this, we're all ears. Myself and Juliet will be in this application together. So yeah, there's only two people not here to answer any questions folks might have. But yeah, exciting stuff. Yeah, so this is some interesting discussion, Jason. I don't know if how much we jammed on it in the last meeting, but I know we kind of talk about it a little bit every time. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any updates on my side. I just saw the possible overlap of what's going on, but I do see your comment here, and I missed the last meeting. It was actually the first one I've ever missed. So the content here, I would love to see the tooling get applied to that. So that's amazing. Yeah, I think that, a little bit of incentive can go a long way, especially for something simple like taking notes. And I love what's been built with the advocate system. So if there's some way to tie that in or some way to copy it and make it simple, I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, we've been thinking on some interesting things. Of we have some formal consensus flow processes for formal decision making that we've been contemplating, but we feel like something similar but designed for informal stuff like organizing around task creation and things like this, or bounty, what would be conventionally bounties. It'll be a way for us to be careful, not to make some of the conventional missteps when it comes to bounties and task creation, whether that's races to the bottom or other variations that can happen with just conventional incentive structures. And one of the things that came about was because the formal decision making and the governance we're thinking about is really tapping into what seems like function at a deeper level, before you get to, what folks' disciplines or backgrounds or skill sets are. And so it's a fairly efficient means of bringing together what would be disparate, projects or works and things like this, or backgrounds, and bring it into, different categories of functions. And then having some accessible language attached to different tasks in a window of time, kind of like the bottom-up quorum stuff that we've been working on and with PolicyKit, we can ensure that folks don't get left behind in projects as task creation happens. We can ensure that certain peoples that may be likely to be interested based on certain functions that they've identified with themselves can get pinged in these windows of time and not get left behind, to kind of maximize accessibility to collaboration and innovation in task creation. So there's not repeated tasks, or similar things can be consolidated when it makes sense. This is some of the things that I was excited to jam with you on, in terms of having the incentive structures be innovation and collaboration, this type of thing, in addition to the reward systems that we have in place, so that it's not just purely monetary incentives that we have going on. We have innovation incentives, or accessibility incentives as well. But yeah,
I love it all. That sounds great.
yeah.
It needs to be more than just a bounty, get your money type program. It needs to create a relationship, it needs to represent the right people. So awesome. I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, we're excited. I'm excited to see how it can come into tangible, like the way the formal decision making has been coming along nicely. Yeah, so we're excited to get these things going, code of conduct wise, or task creation wise. But yeah, I was happy to share that with y'all. If there's any questions or continued discussion there, please, we can keep going. But yeah, we're at 10:27 here. I know this is meeting notes cleanup that you referenced earlier, Jason.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah, so I have a running list of meeting notes and videos to download, and I need to get those updated on the GitHub, so they're updated on the website. It's definitely fallen behind, so it's one that's on my radar, and I'm gonna push to get this one done, because I have most of the information I need. I think the biggest thing is I do have to get some of the videos from Jenny, so I can download them and throw them on YouTube. But we really need to find like a regular cadence with this, or we need to look at, do we need this or not? But I do think that having the video and having the notes accessible is a big deal. This system is maintainable, like we can keep it going. But if we do think of something better, I'm always open to options as well. But I'm going to try and get this back up to speed, because it's been quite a while.
No problem. And obviously it may be relevant to the previous conversation we just had, in terms of giving you any help there if you wanted it.
Yeah, and I'm happy to give direction and like teach people how to do things. Like always happy to help with that.
Yeah, it'd be beautiful culture setter in a lot of ways. Thank you, Conley, for those efforts as always, man. Yeah, so there's this Indigenous education work that we've been doing, is now, went from working on this and getting it into grants, now building it into the governance lab work. So we're excited for, the interview today that's going to help us, have a lot of different paths to getting a lot of this work done. So yeah, there's the digital fabrication stuff that, I think you guys have all heard me talk about, but for folks that may be watching the recording, we're all ears to any folks interested in this work here. And there's some links here that can get you pretty much tapped into where we've left off in the working groups that are working on a whole lot of different projects within education, and also other projects beyond education that if folks if they're interested, can tap into anytime. Yeah, so wrapping up now, I'd imagine we have some backlog stuff here that also is relevant to the task creation or bounty stuff that we just mentioned. A fireside chat series that we often talk about getting underway, and now this is built into the work that we're doing in the lab in a lot of ways, and I think it'll be pretty critical to the advocates program to have events like firesides or workshops of other kinds pretty consistently moving and getting coordinated. And we'll have help from Jojo here to help us do that. We've seen them do some pretty amazing things at SourceCred when it comes to coordination, which is what we've desperately needed, I think, in a lot of ways when it comes to this particular issue. But yeah, if there's anybody else that wants to speak on this, any recent ideas or anything, of course.
Nothing to add, really. Just happy it's still on the list and that we're still working toward it. So that's good to hear.
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, so we have some backlog stuff here for.
Yeah. So last two was like one thought experiment around how to share a Stacks address. Like you can imagine the issue if you were in a company, it would be the same. Like how do you get access to the company account when every Stacks address comes with a private key? So there was some ideas of like how could we share a block survey, or how could we share, just any of the Stacks apps, and haven't gotten an answer on it yet. But I like having the idea out there at least, and I think it's something that will eventually evolve in the ecosystem too. So something I haven't looked at it in a while, but that was the basic idea, was that if we wanted to manage something like the community block survey, how could we add access and revoke access for different users, and how could that exist?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of the app development heavy days of some of the ecosystem, and some I could be mistaken in terms of some of the development tools that we would need to pull this off these days. But like you said, it'd be interesting to see this come to fruition in the ecosystem. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's a timely thought experiment, though, given what's been going on in the different SIPs and the BNS discussions and all of that. I mean, I know those are related to a different, we're not talking about, like, as you said, the app development days, back in app mining and stuff like that. And after that, and before the 2.0, right? So I think there's some really good questions there that there's some, I think this thought experiment should continue on, because I think there's a lot of good questions there, particular for us as in the different organizations that we're active in within the ecosystem. And that's definitely a good question.
Yeah, it seems like we could set some good precedent here with the technology incorporated into our workflows.
And it ties in pretty well with DAOs too. Like a lot of the idea of what people are trying to do with a DAO would be how to set up access, or how to set up control that's like not actually managed by someone. But I think we could get to the middle ground if we were able to share a Stacks ID for something. And I do imagine that, yeah, whoever could figure this out would be kind of sitting on a gold mine, because this is something that corporations could use to, like, let's say they have their own BNS subdomain, and that's how you have your ID, is your person.id.company or similar. I mean, it's a very replicable model that still needs some work, but I would love to see how we can do this and still maintain the security that we look for in these type of scenarios. So fun thought experiment, but nothing really to add aside from that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff in this repo that I think it'd be interesting in this new BNS working group popping up from Larry. Yeah, indirectly or directly. But yeah, and this language translation has got me interested too, because one of the things that we've seen emerge in the advocates program is a fair amount of translation, Chinese translation. And it's one of the most I think conventional forms of what folks call high value data, and it's interesting in terms of what we can, how that's emerging as one of the things going on already in the advocates program. I think it can help this along, hopefully, and if we can wrap some systems design around it. To maximize the potential, because yeah, like it seems like to the point of some of the discussion we're just having in the other topics, some Stacks versions of version control, just when it comes to translation, can be a version of some of the advocates capacities to produce high value data, right? In one of the most conventional forms, but think it speaks to a bunch of different ways that the advocates are will be not just creating high value data, but using their own tools, right? The stack specific dev tools and tools to achieve high value data, which means that maybe the data that is high value that usually gets sold in these conventional, under the surface markets of the whole internet. That can maybe not necessarily have to be the case for new models where the tools, the open source tools, are enticing enough for folks, because that means you can replicate that same type of different types of high value data. But yeah, that's kind of a separate conversation from language and translations. But I just got excited a little bit in terms of the translations popping up in advocates as one of the biggest contributions.
That makes a lot of sense. And thinking about what we discussed earlier as well, is like, it makes sense as a very strong role that different people could be pinged when new stuff comes up, or, for different opportunities. Because I'm sure those same people are trying to find their best way to decide what to translate. And it might be like what's interesting to them, or it may be like things that would be most useful for the community, or you just try to find those lines and what to operate on. And I would suspect that, somebody, especially who's doing translations regularly, would love to get pinged with like, hey, this needs to be translated, and here's something you can get for it.
Right.
And it would be kind of a win-win all around. And another thing I thought of too is the chapter leads would be good people to reach out to regarding their different chapters, and then if they could recruit from their different resources as well, because I'm sure this is something that they encounter regularly.
Yeah, it's kind of a good icebreaker in some ways too, because we'd really love to bring folks in from these different leads in these different chapters to grow the advocates in some of the first growth spurts, So yeah, I think a lot of that goes nicely together. Yeah.
We'll crack the code. We'll figure it out.
This has been good meeting y'all. We can have some just open-ended, all the way open-ended discussion if anybody has anything to say. But I appreciate y'all being here and jamming with me. Yeah, we're good on time, I think.
Yeah, I think we're all good. We powered right through it. I don't really have anything to add at this point. Just always good to hear from you guys and see what's going on. Love the work you both have been doing, and I try to keep up with as much as I can. So you've actually, Harold, you've gotten ahead of me a little bit, because I didn't catch that comment and a little bit of what's going on there. But I think that's the best we can do, is like keep taking small steps towards big goals.
No, I've learned a lot from you, man, in terms of this GitHub stuff. And I think that there's a whole lot of value been built in already from the work you've been doing. And like as things keep going forward, we'll see this repo be pretty important for how we have just a place to come together consistently. And just stay tapped in. It's been nice for the time.
Awesome. Appreciate you both. Juliet, always good to have you.
Yes. I'll stop.
Thanks, guys. Jason, I'm glad you're feeling better. Good to hear that you and your wife are feeling better.
Thank you. Yeah. It's always good to feel better. You know what I mean? It's, you come back like, wow, this is what better feels like.
Grateful. Yeah.
So I try to hold on to that as long as I can.
Yeah.